This guest speaker, he hails from Fresno, California. Him and his lovely wife been around ACN 8 years plus. He was a fire captain, and he shares a story. He almost lost his house, but a girlfriend of theirs introduced him to the ACN opportunity. That they launched in their business. They got started, turned around and built a nice organization. He's a father, he's a grandfather. Every time I go to Fresno, he cooked these beef ribs that I've never had before. And I mean, he could do better than people in the South. Let me tell you that. He is also a gentleman and a scholar. He's also a great guy, but only that, a community leader, but he connects everybody. And without further ado, Regional Director, Mr. Chris King, and let's give him a hand.
I want to thank everybody for being on here. Good to see you guys. You know, guys, it's super simple. I mean, I thank Mr. Thomas and thank our military. Thank everyone who keeps us safe here, our police, our fire, just for the jobs that they do. If you guys know people out there that do those, you know, thank them daily. Thank Mr. Thomas for letting us have this call so we can get information from different people doing different things and maybe open some doors for us. And Mr. Thomas, really appreciate this call and the mentorship you give anybody who asks, which is quite amazing. So really appreciate you more than I you know. But and I try and show that when I cook them ribs up for you. So guys, I got a little bit to go here, so we're gonna get right on it. And like I say, I'm not really one to be in front of the spotlight. I don't mind saying what, you know, comment and stuff like that, but you know, and honestly, if you were anything on the news or anything out on a fire, you owed everybody at your station ice cream. And there's way too many people on this call right now for me to be buying everybody ice cream. So, but let's get started on this, guys. So I want to ask you guys a question, and I know a lot of you aren't going to answer, but I just want to get you thinking. There's some stuff that you need to know. And Mr. Thomas, I'm going to tell you, what was interesting is the three people which worked out perfect. The three people you had speak this morning about Cleveland and what they said about you and your demeanor, your character, how you present things out there in the field is going to work in perfect with what I'm going to bring today. So appreciate that, boss. I'm glad it worked out like it did. So here's my question, guys. How do you, because we all do it different, how do you define success in ACN? How do you do it? Put that in your head, okay? Now, hopefully it's not a position, but a specific amount of income that you want to make per month, okay? Now, understand this, is you can make a pin without the income and you can make the income without the pin. And we all saw that on these calls, and it was pointed out that that man from Alturas, Cameron, he talked about that. Yeah, he talked about what his residual was as, what was he say, RC or RD? So the potential's out there to make the money without the pin. So don't be all pin oriented. Set your goals down, and just be as precise. Now, the reason why I was going to talk about this stuff today, I had a young man, a friend of mine that I haven't got to meet yet, WhatsApp me a few questions. And I thought, you know what, those are some good questions. I know we've talked about it on the call before, but I texted him back, hey, boss, this Monday, whatever, the 15th of August, we're going to be throwing it down. So be on there and listen, because he's going to answer all the questions, because it's going to be helpful for other people. So that's why we're going to go this route. So now, if success, getting back to this, so if success to you is only a couple $100, and that's totally doable with customers. We all agree to that? Couple hundred with customers, no problem. But if you want to make the big money, and we're talking, I'm not talking, you know, $1 billion. I'm talking about the big money that's going to set you free, both monetarily and time. Okay. And we're talking 60,000 plus. Then you're going to need to build a team. Okay. And that's what this call is going to help you do. Okay. I'm going to give you some ideas with the prospect. Like Mr. Thomas, some of you guys got to see that firsthand. And if you haven't seen that firsthand, you're missing a blessing. Find Mr. Thomas, even if you got it. And I'll be honest with you guys. I'm going to tell you something. If you took the time to set up the appointment and you flew to Vegas, Mr. Thomas would meet you and show you. It would be worth every penny you spent to go do that. So take advantage of that stuff. I mean, psychologically, it's important, because when you see it being done, you're going to be like, okay, I get it. All right. So now first, let's go over and I want to cover some important psychological information that's going to help out tremendously, because there's a lot, like you say, you guys should hear yourselves when you're talking about what you saw Mr. Thomas do. Now, why couldn't you say the same thing, exact same thing that Mr. Thomas said? You guys absolutely could, but you're going to get different results, and we're going to cover why. This is all about the psychological part of it. So, to do that, I'm going to talk about something that might be emotional for some people. I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I'm using this, and you'll understand why in the end. So let's look at this as objectively as we can. And this example is used for a reason. Now, this example here in this story is actually got out of the book that's called The Power. It's by Joe Caruso. It's about authentic power and the principles of authentic power. It is not a book. It is only an audible. And it's by Joe Caruso. Highly recommended. So let's see here. Now, so for this example, we're going to talk about, and you'll understand the reason why in the end. So if a young lady in her early 20s is in a physical abusive relationship, okay? Set the tone here. Now, she's able to get out of that relationship, okay? Abusive relationship, she's able to beat the odds and get out of that relationship. What type of relationship can we expect her to most likely get into after this? Anybody? She's in an abusive relationship. Yeah. If you said another abusive relationship, you're right. Now, this is statistically, not necessarily, but it is statistical. She gets out of one, her chances are going in another one. And here's why. This is where it's going to tie into what I was talking to you about Mr. Thomas. Okay. So people's myths and stories will help them develop propensities to attract and find these people. Not only can they do this once, but they can do it again and again and again. Anybody see those people keep repeating the same thing? Okay. Now, so we're going to call this young lady Susie, okay? So we'll say Susie was in a physical abusive relationship we talked about, and she beat the odds and got out of that. And how did she beat the odds to find the actual jerk that would hit her? Okay? To get out of that relationship and get into another one, beat the odds and find somebody else, okay? Here's how that happened. Why does that happen, people wonder? So here's how it happens. Let me share a little bit about the science behind this. Okay, it's a book called The Psychology of Optimal Experience. And it's by a man named Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi. Okay, and he's seen in the world as the world leader in the psychology and flow of human experience. Quotes and studies done in Milan by Yosemite. Okay. So in this study, they found that we have the capacity to throw off, now get this, 72,000 images a minute. I'm talking about the words you use, the tones you'll use, your voice. If you pause, if you don't pause, if you blink, if you swallow, if you breathe out, if you breathe in, a color of our skin, which is bad for me because being as pale as I am, I show when I'm blushing, I show when I'm mad, I show when I'm happy. I'm screwed. I can't hide nothing. Okay, but 72,000 images a minute. Okay, and each thing that goes on, it counts as a message. Now, here we have the capacity in our minds, have the capacity basically to simulate up to 7,560 bits of information in a minute. Now, how did we come up with that? As because the mind can process 7 bits of information at one time. And it takes an 1/18 of a second to go from one set of bits to another set of bits. So when you do the math, it comes up with 7,560. So you can give off 72,000, but I can only receive 7,560. Okay? And that's at one time. So what does this have to do with Susie? Pay attention. I'm getting there. Okay, she's been out of the dating game for a while. She goes to a party and she walks into a room behaving congruently with her driving myths, her stories, and her beliefs. She is the story that she tells herself that she is and what she does, and communicates that at 72,000 images a minute. And one of those driving myths that she has is, I don't deserve to be loved, or it's okay if I get hit, because the part of how someone loves me, because that's part of how someone loves me, okay? That's how she knows. And now the jerk entering the room, he doesn't approach people like Joe Caruso, because he's telling the story. He doesn't approach people like Joe Caruso. Okay, it's because, I mean, if he was a female, because Joe learned early that if you want Joey to come out and play, you have to be at least nice to Joey, as nice as he is to you, or Joey will not come out in your world. Okay, now I learned that, and he learned that early, so he wouldn't approach people like Joe Caruso if he was a female, but he would approach Susie, because Susie, at 72,000 images a minute that she's throwing off, her driving truths, and at 7,560 images a minute he receives, he's getting it. And he's throwing off his 72,000 images a minute, and their attraction to each other goes beyond physical, conscious, subconsciously. They understand each other, will make them right. This is interesting why we have the phrase, birds of a feather flock together. Now you're getting it. What are you throwing off? Now, I'm going to ask you guys. Now we know, because it was just explained by 3 different people who saw Mr. Thomas do the same thing. We know what Mr. Thomas's images, the 72,000 images a second or a minute, are. So what communication messages am I or are you letting off? That's the big question. Are you letting out the same communicating messages that, say, Mr. Thomas or Julian Lewis? Like, and Julian Lewis has talked about this before on one of these calls. You can say the exact same thing. And I just said this, exact same thing to someone with great success. But if your communication images aren't right, your verbal message will miss your potential target. So understand psychology that is involved with humans, and it'll help you communicate messages that will move beyond move your business forward. So guys, here it is. If you're not telling yourself in the mirror, I will win today, I will get 3 messages, I am going to be successful, I'm going to get like Jen's on her way to RD. I am going to get RD by November 1st, November 30th. I am going to do this. I am going to be that. I am. You're not doing yourself any service. Okay. So we want to move our business forward. So now we understand the psychology, and we're going to go over a few things about prospecting. And Mr. Thomas, it's like I say, it's worked perfect. Okay. So the first thing about and why you to understand a few things. So why follow the ACN system? They want to know your warm market. Who do you know, right? It's the first thing they want to know. It's your warm market. You know everybody. You know what they're like, okay? There's a reason for that. So Rose and I, we took the team when they used to have these, an advanced training, and it was in Las Vegas. Okay, there were approximately 300 plus people at the event, and the speaker asked everybody in the room, if you've been recruited by a family member or a friend, stand up. You know, you're looking around, you're wondering who's going to stand up, right? 80+% of that room stood up. 80 plus. That was huge. Our mouths were open because all of us had been recruited by a family or a friend. Like, holy crap, no one thought about that. But it was proof that the ACS system works. That's why your warm market's so important. It's very effective. So here's what we make sure we tell our people. You're new in the business. Miss Batiste, you're brand new on the team. We talk about this, how important your warm market is, the people you know that are closest to you. Because here's what it is. For every 10 exposures to the business that we have with your warm market, right, you get 1 to 2 business partners. The math is there, okay? So we let the new IBO know these statistics because it's as powerful as is. How good is it to go in your first week, you've got a couple business partners and you're starting to grow a team and you're starting to get some more points? I mean, people still quit, but how excited are people? Right? Okay. So set these expectations with your new IBOs on your warm market, right? And here's the cool thing about it. They've already know the expectations. You set them out. So if they quit or saying this doesn't work, our question is always like, it's interesting because the people who say this have only maybe brought 2-3 people to see the business. And they're like, oh, this isn't working. Like, well, how many, we talked about that. How many people did we talk to about the business? Well, and it goes back to, you're going to be successful because of you, and you're going to be unsuccessful because of you. Okay. So remember that warm market's huge. So let's have some other ways of recruiting. So we've gone through our warm market. A lot of people have done that. They've been around a while. And you got to remember here, most people that we go out and recruit have an employee mindset. You guys notice that? I'm not being mean. I mean, it's just, you guys, this is generational teaching, like from birth, right? So that's why it's important to communicate the business in a way the employee understands. Okay, I say this because of the program for birth, right? So when getting new IBOs started, ask them, your warm market, Miss Batiste, Miss Olson, Mr. Thomas, your warm market. Let's talk about the people that you know. Because here it is. If you had a job application, right? And that application, anybody ever fill out a job application before? Did they ask for referrals or references? Every single one, right? So let me ask you a question. When they ask that, do you put down solid people in your lives? Do you put down people of power, business owners, political figures? Oh, heck yeah. People ask me all the time, oh, hey, Mr. King, you know, you're a fire captain. That's big, right? But here's what happens. People want to put down lazy Uncle Joe who still lives with mom, right? Friends who don't go to school or work, but they game, they're pretty good, right? So it's the same, understand, it's the same with business partners, right? We're going out recruiting cold market now, right? People we don't know. But remember, treat it like it's an application. You put people down on that you know, trust, and would follow. Okay, that's huge. So make sure your references. Now we're going through this. And look, you guys recruited one person. Now you have the potential to get several more business partners out of that on your team from that one person. Who do they know? Okay. Now with the cold market, going into the cold market recruiting, there's several different ways of doing this. Mr. Thomas has got, I mean, I've probably heard, you know, like, hey, every time I come here, I see you. Always working. You got a cot in the back? They got a bed for you out back? I make money every time a cell phone rings. You know, and his stuff he's used forever. So in the cold market recruiting, you know, what's Dean Trolley do? Dean Trolley's got his own little method, but it works. So don't be afraid. We guys have heard all this. We've been out with Mr. Thomas. We've heard Mr. Thomas. Let's just put the stuff to work. But understand, guys, this stuff isn't going to work if what you're communicating with your actions, your 72,000 images, aren't where they need to be. You say the same thing as Mr. Thomas, the same thing as Dean Trolley, the same thing as Julian Lewis. It doesn't matter. If you don't get those messages going out that I'm going to crush this, I'm going to run people over who stand in my way, you are going to be paddling, dog paddling in that pool of water forever. You're never going to make it to the side. Okay? So this is where it comes in that you have to know your elevator pitch. Has anybody here ever gone to a speed networking group? Yeah, Miss Batiste knows. You got like 2 minutes for them to tell their story, for you to tell yours. If you've never done that, go to see how good your elevator speech is. It will wake you up. So know your elevator pitch, because you never know when those 30 seconds are going to come. You never know, okay? So some of the stuff I do, we've got stuff that Mr. Trolley does. Mr. Trolley likes to go back 2 or 3 times. Mr. Thomas is just boom. So those images, man, that's why he's so successful. But it's just, what I do is kind of the same, but a little bit different. So I like to form people because that opens up conversation and you people be more comfortable. So when you form someone, it's family, occupation, recreation, message, or money. Okay. And and about the first three questions, you get to really kind of know what this person, where they're coming from. Okay. So if it is, like, hey, I'm this, I'm that, I'm going to school. And if you guys have been around me, the wife, Rose, knows, oh, you're going to school. What are you going to be when you grow up? And I don't care how old they are, which makes it kind of funny. We're like, well, I'm kind of grown up now. Oh, yeah, but what are you going to do when you grow up, though? Oh, I want to be this. I want to be that. So for me, when someone says, I'm a college student, I says, oh, that's awesome. What are you studying? What are you going to be when you grow up? Oh, I'm going to be international business, or I'm going to be in business. Oh my gosh, my wife does international business, right? She would love to sit down and talk to you over coffee and kind of go over some of the stuff that she's doing here locally. And like, really? Okay, I would love to, in most cases, right? If it's a girl, I immediately go to my wife. If it's a guy, I say we. Okay? So that's just, I don't want to make sure there's no miscommunication on anything out there. Okay? So I say we do international business. And then I ask them, you usually get asked, well, what type of business is it? I says, well, we do telecom and energy, but we are currently expanding in the area here, right? Now, here's what we ask, because we got to pre-qualify people, right? So would you be interested in a side project or a side hustle, whatever you want to say, a business project, right? Are you interested in a business project if it doesn't interfere with what you're already doing? Would you be interested in me sending you some information? And I can send them a peeking video or Mr. Koopa's, okay? It's cold market. Now, here's what's interesting to know. Now, if I'm out shopping and I strike up the conversation with someone at the cash register, I'm leaving, right? You don't have a lot of time when there's people behind you. And the managers are always walking through, right? So if I don't have time to say, hey, my wife does it, we do this, and get a name and number type of exchange, because usually they say, hey, they're watching, I can't give my number out. I've had them say that, right? That's when I carry a business card. Okay. It's basically a peeking card. And I said, give me a call later. Okay. And I'll talk about my peeking cards here in a little bit. But you have to be ready at all times so you don't stand flat-footed walking out thinking, what could I have done next? That's called regret. Okay. But pre-qualify these people and be ready if you can't get a name and number. Because how many times you guys been someplace and the manager's basically hovering around because you're talking to somebody? It's like, oh my gosh, really? So how about business owners? Anybody ever come across business owners? We all have, right? So after forming a business owner, and I had to learn to do this, and it was kind of fun doing it, but I had to learn like a 5-minute presentation. You got 5 minutes, and that's actually, you do it with a friend or a spouse. That's pretty funny. But when a business owner, after I formed a business owner, and he asked, well, so what do you do? And I says, well, I actually teach business owners how to reduce their overhead while creating a residual income when they pay their monthly bills. Okay, you got 5 minutes so I can show you how it works? Done. And they're gonna say, you know what, actually I do. What's a good time? The restaurant owner or whatever. I got a guy who owns 5 Colorado grills right now that I got to get information to. So yeah, it's simple. I met him at at a coffee shop. So it's just being out and about, like Mr. Thomas says. So, but 5-minute presentation, because that business owner doesn't have time. So get some practice in. So now that covers warm market, cold market. So now here's kind of the questions that they were asking, was more of these. So he asked about flyers and peeking cards. Now, Mr. Thomas has showed some of his flyers, and yes, we've used them. And we've got a business partner, some customers out of it, right? But here's some statistics. Flyers and peeking cards, we kind of, talk about the same thing, that only 20% of people actually read the flyer or the business card through thoroughly, 23%. So for instance, if you handed out 1,000 of them, right? 1,000 cards, you get between 10 and 50 responses. Okay. Not business partners or customers, just responses. Okay. That means you have a 1 to 5% success rate out of the 23%, right? Now, like I say, I've used them and we've had some success, but the stats there don't show it's something that we could do. Now, here's an issue though, guys. How many people do you know keep making business cards and flyers and handing them out? A lot of people, right? Miss Williams knows. So let me ask you a question. How long were you going to have with your new IBO if they're doing 1,000 cards and giving them out, doing 1,000 flyers and giving them out? Before, how long would that have to happen with a 1 to 5% response rate before they tell you ACN doesn't work? So be aware of your numbers, guys. Okay, be aware of your numbers. Now, the other thing is business cards. Here's some interesting stats. Woo-hoo. So now here's Mr. Thomas used, when we went to the internationals, Mr. Thomas said, get at least, what was it, 10 business cards from somebody else there at the international. So I was collecting, I was always getting more than, because you sit around in the morning waiting to get in. I'd come home with 15, 20, 30 cards sometimes. And I actually have a stack of these cards, right? So from my experience, what I've seen, right? Everybody wants their business cards to explain everything they do on that one little card. You don't believe me? You go to the next, you go to Florida, ask some people for some business cards, and ACN's got a couple of them. Everything we do, right? And honestly, guys, that's fine if you want to do that. But statistically, you're putting too much information for that person to see, and it's just going to be blob. Now, here's the sucky part. The stat is that 88% of all business cards that are handed out to people end up in the trash. 88%. It's not a good stat. Unless you're going, you know, some cards are cheaper, some cards are more expensive, but be careful. Okay. So some of the best success that I've had with the business card thing, right, was not handing them out. In fact, one of the guys in my networking group says, you're the only business owner I know that doesn't have his own card, because I wouldn't give him one. And you know what I told him? I says, I am my business card. Why do I need a piece of paper? Right? So he was like, oh, yeah, okay, I guess so. But some of the best success I had that I created, and they still make them, they're called moo cards. Moo like a cow, M-O-O, cards. They used to have, and I looked for, I've been out, and they quit making them. But they're probably as big as my thumb. About this, you know, the business card length, but about this wide. Okay, here's what I had on them. I had my full name, my phone number, my email address, and the city and state I lived in on one side. On a little card, fit perfect. On the other side, I had a quote. Not just one quote, I had about 7 different quotes. Okay, I love some Helen Keller quotes, some Jim Rohn. I mean, I had several of them. Okay. But here's what's crazy, guys. You didn't get a card just because I met you, okay? Unless that's the card I had if I was being watched at the store, right? So that was the card I gave out, right? I was giving a card to someone I had already formed and or built a rapport with. That's who got a business card, okay? Now, how many of us are doing those things? And it comes to commitment. How many now are going to work on their communication, their nonverbal communication? You got to have it. Okay. Now, another option that we've kind of dug into is social media. Everyone's kind of got the social media issue. And Mr. Thomas, and he sees some of that stuff. But here's a note, guys. Don't just blatantly post. You become the spam friend, and no one likes spam, which means no one likes you anymore. Okay? But I'm going to tell you guys, this is not my specialty, so I'm not going to dive into it. And there's a couple reasons. First, it's not my specialty. but you guys dive into this field, look into it. Rose is doing this now. Okay, there are tactics and methods that are effective and make it worth your time. But I struggle with that because as soon as I have nuclear ADDHD. Okay, because as soon as I see a post, I go squirrel. So study the field, get the skill set needed to go into this. Okay. Here's a stat for you. I'm going to tell you that there's a lady I want to introduce you guys to, or talk about here in a minute. But Fraser Brooks, he teaches and writes books on social media for network marketers. Okay, basically you'll need to reach out, add them, and message 10 people just to get one person to respond. Okay, to get a business partner, you'll do the same thing, but to 30 or 40 people. So know what your math is when you get into this, so you don't get burned out. But you need to have the skill sets. Now, there's a lady, her name's Jessica Higdon. Her husband, Ray Higdon, I highly recommend getting into his stuff. He's got some phenomenal information for you that's going to help you grow. Okay. But she, as a young 20-year-old with her friends all partying, she built a multi-million-dollar gigantic team through social media. It is actually doable. Okay, she didn't do ACN, she did something else. It was a product thing, but it is actually doable. But she learned the skill sets necessary. So guys, if you're going to prospect, learn the skill sets necessary. Okay. It's all based on your skill sets. So first things first, guys, if you guys aren't going to build your personal messaging that you're getting out to people, you can say the exact same thing Mr. Thomas says, and it's not going to work. And you're going to wonder why. And that's it. If you don't think you're someone who's going to go out and smash the industry in your area, you're chasing yourself. You're chasing your dreams. So go out, become that person you need to become. If you're not self-developing every day, if you're not, being around people like you, if you're not doing those things and following people like Mr. Thomas and Julian Lewis and Dean Tiroli and, Miss Woods, you're dog paddling. You're not going anywhere. So, Mr. Thomas, that's all I have, sir. Sorry I went over a little bit, but thank you very much, sir. I appreciate you.